Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And today we are joined by MSU certified mystical life coach, Roger Schultz, everybody. Yes.
Let's go for Ellie.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. Roger, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to sit down and talk to you today because your topic is just, we're getting right into it. Toxic masculinity and narcissism. Let's just kick things off, Roger. Why did you pick this topic, and what's been going on with you that this is what you wanted to discuss today?
Because that was me. You know, navigating the relationship, marriage, fatherhood, things like that. You know, subconscious programming and patterns in and around. Like, I'm peeling back the layers of my mother, my father. You know, also from like an ancestral perspective, like learning how all that played out. Learning how that all just came into being, you know, and that's really what was modeled for me was ego, narcissism, self-centeredness, dismissiveness, disassociation, sprinkled with some scarcity and survival in there. But that's how I showed up for a very long time in my marriage with my beloved. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of unpack, because I feel it's a strong topic. In this space, especially for men, learning how to become more divine and aware in their relationships with their husband, wife, you know, kids, grandparents, parents, all that type of stuff. So that was kind of the reason for the topic.
It's definitely showed up in me. I've seen narcissism in myself show up, especially in my partnership, and it's whenever it does, I'm not quite aware of it. And whenever my partner points it out, I'm like, oh, shit. Shit.
Yeah.
Normally first there's a little bit of defensiveness, like, and then, you know, I'm like, Danny, you're getting defensive. You're running a program. Look at yourself. Look at how you're showing up right now. And then I have to really sit in it. And it sucks to know that there's a part of me that only cares about myself and is so self-centered and is completely unconscious and oblivious to whenever I'm showing up like that. And then whenever I do, I realize how unloving I'm being, how I'm not, how I'm closer to spreading harm because it's coming from a place of self instead of oneness and unity and love. And it's one of the hardest pills I've had to swallow, is the narcissism pill of understanding, oh yeah, this is in you and this is how you show up sometimes, and I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, it's a sticky dense energy. You know, and through the journey, like the best part about what you shared there, Danny, for me, like what I unpacked from that is like your self-awareness around it. You know, like being able to, in that moment, look at and go, oh, this is how I'm showing up. And then take those moments in time to, you know, offer that space for your partner. Like, how beautiful is that? Versus just running the program subconsciously and just spewing and projecting, which is narcissism and ego and things like that's awesome. You know, and we need more men in the world that can do that. You know, that can show up more divinely in those spaces. You know, and like kind of dovetailing to that, you know, when I was going through this journey that started with plant medicine, started with some different things, you know, learning through my pain body. Like, that's how I learned. Like, I had to run my head against the wall thousands and thousands of times until it finally was like, oh, hey, you can just step to the left and just walk straight ahead with no obstacle. You know, so I had a Taita of mine, a teacher of mine, give me some interesting information around energetics that said narcissist, once you're a narcissist, you're always a narcissist. And I was like, well, I respect you as a teacher. I honor you as a teacher, but it didn't feel right, you know? And so during the course with Rachel, I was going through some really dark night of the soul type stuff. I think it's all of us have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
God, man, it's like we were like swimming in it. You know what I mean? But what popped up in an introspective, exercise was, holy shit, I had narcissistic tendencies. Like what was that? Like, how do I unwind this? Like, how do I get out of this quicksand? And I was really scared, terrified to email Rachel and ask her for help. Because I went back to that comment of once a narcissist, always a narcissist.
Wow.
So I was like, is she going to kick me out of class? Is she going to say X? Like, is it going to be a showstopper for, like, I felt hopeless, apathetic.
Wow.
Like all the work up until that point was bullshit. And like, this was my ceiling. Like, this is as far as I can go in this journey. And it's fucking sucked, you know? So learning how to, like, swim in that pain first and foremost, not bypass the pain. Case in point, and then just getting the courage, moving the apathy up the ladder to courage to email Rachel and you know, in her Fiori way, as we've all experienced, very beautifully, compassionately gentle and powerful, saying it's just energy. It is energetics. It can be moved. It can be alchemized. How can I help? And that just like poured so much more love and so much more gratitude to say this was the right program to choose. These were the right people to come into my life at this particular point in time to experience this expansion with. So yeah, that was a little bit about that.
You know, it takes tremendous courage to come on a podcast and the first thing you talk about is how much you've been a narcissist. Like, seriously, man.
Hey,
like,
you got to punch it in the face, I guess. You know what I mean?
And it's credit to the amount of work that you've so clearly done, because you can speak so openly and freely about this shadow aspect of yourself. And if it was still in the darkness, if it was still in your shadow, you know, you would be afraid to speak of it. And I know, because I have to do it as well. It's a really, really tough pill. It really is, to honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say that. So really, like, hat off. If I was wearing a hat, I'd be taking it off right now.
Man. Well, it's headphones. There
you go. Yeah. So, that's huge. And no, it's not something that I'm actually super well versed in, fully understanding. And I don't think I've got to the bottom of mine. I've seen growth in myself, in myself around this topic, but I don't feel like I've got to the root of where it started. Ultimately, I think I have some intuitive thoughts, but where did you start to notice? When was the first time that these tendencies were showing up? And is this something that you've been your entire life? I just want to go a little deeper into your program of narcissism.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'll give it like a little bit of like quick history. So my father was murdered when I was 18 months old. He was involved in a shooting that he could have avoided, you know. So my mom raised, I'm the youngest of two older brothers, very competitive, very brutal. Like, the way we showed love was beating each other. I mean, like, beating each other up, you know, not like punching each other. I mean, we went to blows quite a bit of times. But my mom, raising three boys, she had to step out, be the breadwinner, be both mother, father. From there, moved to Seattle with a stepfather who taught me how not to cry through physical abuse, like over and over and over again. And so to learning how to take his power away through shutting all my emotions down, like becoming numb, becoming apathetic, becoming, just this void of emotionless, skin. And so that took his power away. But that's really where I learned the narcissism. That's where I really learned how to elevate my anger and rage so that I don't get triggered. So when people come around me, they're like, oh, don't piss off Roger. Because it was a protection mechanism. I don't want to be triggered. I don't want to have to deal with my emotions. So I am going to generate a narcissistic, egotistical energy in my friend group or my associate group so that people walk on eggshells around me. So I'm controlling, I'm manipulating, subconsciously through these subtle energy bodies, like, leave me the fuck alone. And it was really because I don't want to have to deal with my pain. So I don't want to have to deal with my pain. I'm going to make you feel pain if you bring up my stuff. And so, yeah, it was, that's really where I started learning. It was around 8, 9, 10 years old, from there. And then it went into, I emancipated myself when I was 15, moved out of the house, lived in my car, because I knew I could raise myself better than my mom.
Wow.
So that turned into survival mechanisms. That turned into, again, if I show up as weak, emotionally weak, then just as in the animal kingdom, you're the weak link. You get preyed on. They separate you from the pack. They kill you, and was my survival mechanism.
Yeah.
So I had to be narcissistic, to kind of cope with that stuff.
One of the mechanisms I've seen that I do within me, that came out through my partner recently, was I would, when we were going through some kind of like conflict, or if I'd done something wrong, I would get super emotional and I would break down so that the woman then felt sorry for me so that then we were dealing with, oh, well, you're like, Danny's in pain, instead of, and it was like this like deflection thing where, if I just get really sad right now, then we don't have to like confront any of the stuff that's actually going on. And when I realized that that's how I was doing, and like that's one of the ways that I feel like is like my narcissistic self showing up, is like that's manipulating the situation emotionally so that we can avoid the real thing, which is like, let me avoid feeling guilt for what I did and let me just go into pain and sadness so that you feel sorry for me. And then that way, like, the situation is better. And I have no idea when I officially learned that, but obviously it stems from my childhood, right? That is a very childlike thing that we do, and probably a mechanism that I learned. Actually, there's actually a memory that just came alive when I was saying that, and it was shortly after my parents had separated. Wow, this is crazy. And I was we were supposed to be doing birthday. Oh wow, this is nuts. I haven't thought about this memory forever. I was supposed to be doing a birthday card for, not a birthday, I think it was like an Easter card for our parents, and I didn't want to do one for my parents because they split up, so I did one for my girlfriend, and I got in trouble for it.
Oh wow.
And I ended up bursting into tears and crying in the toilet. This is wild that it's all coming back to me. I was 7 years old, and I think right then I realized, oh, all I have to do is bring up this wound of like, oh, feel sorry for me because I feel abandoned, and I don't have to deal with the consequences of my actions. Wow. Thank you for listening, and let me work through that, everyone.
Live.
Doing the work live.
Narcissism
Roger,
is a deep one.
Roger, it's really interesting because I have spent 6 months with your wife in class, and I know your wife really well, and what a beautiful being she is.
She loves you. She absolutely adores you, Ellie.
I love her so much. She's amazing. And it's interesting because you and your partner are doing this work together, right? And my partner and I are also doing this work together. And my partner also definitely had narcissistic tendencies. And in the beginning of our relationship, because I wasn't in my power and because my woundedness just wanted to appease him, I played into the narcissism a lot, because if I approached him with it, then there would be a potential absence of love that would be taken from me, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't until I started working through my stuff and I started stepping into my power was I then be able to say, like, hey, you do this thing that's really narcissistic and it's all about you all the time, and like I just need to confront it about you because it's really bothering me. And it wasn't until then that the tide started to shift, and then it opened up this space for us to really start communicating in this beautiful way and healing. So I would love to hear what it's been like for you to be on this journey with your wife and how she stepped into her power when it comes to dealing with your narcissism.
So we started in this journey. She started before me, in that aspect, and it started with a no grandmother ceremony, and I shamed the shit out of her for it. I threw everything at her in the kitchen sink, because I was running my rigidity programs from certain things that had happened in my past life. So I was like very black and white, very structured. Drugs, no drugs. Like I classified this stuff as like drugs. And with all that shit and all that toxicity and all that narcissism, she still stepped off the cliff and went on the journey. And that fascinated the shit out of me, that someone that I was controlling through ego and narcissism and shame and gaslighting and everything else still just looked at me and said, I never really had that happen, especially from a woman perspective, because I'd gone through, all those things as a young athlete, in a very toxic way in my relationships with women. And, from there, we got to a place where, we separated, and she stood in her power and separated. And really where that went from, was she was really stepping into, the energetic arts, the healing arts, like really expanding like what her purpose here is in this journey. And as she started to grow her power, I could feel it. So I had to drag her down, because as she grew in power, and it came to that point of, as she grew in power, she wouldn't need me. If she didn't need me,
I hear all the time.
She wouldn't love me. And if she didn't love me, she would leave me. And there went the abandonment and rejection wound that I was programmed with from my mom. So through this whole journey, one thing that came apparent, and she and I talked about this. It was 2, 3 in the morning, and I was just out on the front lawn where I was living when we were separated. And this huge epiphany came through, this huge awareness of, holy shit, I am creating the exact same relationship I had with my mom as I have with Adrian. Like, I am looking for mommy. And when mommy doesn't give me the attention, I act out. You know what I mean? So like this very, kind of gross, relationship, like constantly asking for acknowledgement, appreciation, things like for doing the dishes, because I never received that from my mom. I had to go seek it outside.
Wow.
So I was constantly doing these things energetically that was just recreating that relationship with mom. So going through this journey, when Rachel's work came up, like we were both in this space of like, what do we do next? Like what's next? Like for me, it was like, well, if I have to go through the woo-woo stuff, if I have to start wearing head to toe linen, grow my hair out, wear like the MC Hammer linen pants, and walk around with symbols hanging from my hands, and again, I'm not, shaming that, or that was just me running these programs. I'm like, well, I can do that. I'll do that for a little bit until the universe, like I'm willing to go through that to continue my journey. And then all of a sudden the Paul Chek podcast came up, which I think is pretty synonymous with a lot of us. And I was like, holy shit, like that truth has a ton of frequency, and that frequency just like pierced my heart.
Yes.
And so she and I talked about it, and it eventually came to the point where we both went through the journey. And I can honestly say if we both hadn't gone through the journey, we wouldn't be together.
Did you decide as a couple that you were both going to do it, or was it like one of you saw it and was like, I'm going to do this, you should do it too? Or how exactly did that come about?
I was curious if you were going to ask that question, Danny, because that's an interesting thing. Like, you know, I've been so disconnected from my feminine side, like, you know, growing up, like, and through this whole thing and unpacking it, I definitely went over feminine energy, you know, like really, really got into that side, you know, so over giving.
During the program or before the program?
Before the program.
Before.
And
Okay.
so when it came up, you know, I went to Adrian and said, look, we'll make this work. You know, you go through the program, money, we'll figure that whole thing out, you know. And so it was just like me pouring. Like, even though I was like, I want to fucking go through this. Like, I want to do this. So I was like completely shutting down my needs, my wants for the sake of allowing Adrian. So it was like very interesting. Like, I had really stepped into majority like my feminine energy, and she was very masculine, you know, from her energy perspective. So it was like, you know, subjugating myself to that masculine energy, like, oh, you go do this. And it was very authentic, but again, like unpacking it, like, oh, that was a very interesting kind of dynamic. But through that whole process, we arrived at the stage of both of us going through it. You know, and, you know, I emailed Rachel, went through the interview process. I'm like, Adrian, you've got to do this. Like, you have to explore this. And then she went and did it. And then we just decided to do it together, you know, in different classes. So.
Yeah. And I can't imagine how powerful this process has been going through it together, because not only now we're at an elevated place where, you know, you can have a conscious partnership and you're not projecting all these programs onto each other because you're really taking accountability for your shit, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But you're also going through this whole growth process where you're opening up and you can really understand what the other person is going through, and vice versa. Like they can see you on a whole different level. And I mean, I'm certified now as a relationship coach, and I can't wait to really guide couples through this journey, because it really is. And the magic that can be found from the space that you're able to create by removing the programs and wounding, it's like nothing I've ever felt before. And it really opens you up to the magic and the mystical parts of the universe. Because I mean, the connection that I found with the partner I'm with now, like, completely transcends all of the other things that I felt in the path, and the level of depth that I'm able to go to. And I know this is only the beginning. So I mean, what is it like to walk the path of being on this path and doing the work, and also having a partner who is so advanced in this work as well?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Our conversations are definitely drastically different than where they were when we were, you know, unconscious or whatever it is. You know, like, we'll be doing something and we'll jokingly be like, what pattern or program are you running right now, honey? Like, is this a scarcity program? You know, but and again, we laugh about it, but it has a ton of value, because we now don't hide from the tough conversations. We don't push it down. And when we have those conversations, it is so much more from a place of love. Like, hey babe, like, I'm feeling, you know, a little disconnected, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling some pressure around money. You know, I'm feeling some pressure around work. And going back to like the toxic masculinity side, like when I'd get home from work, I was like, fuck you. I'm vomiting everything on you that I feel. What I feel, you're going to feel, and you're going to feel it. The whole house is going to fucking feel it. Like, how shitty is that? Like, how shitty is that I don't have the awareness as a young man to process my own shit around work and I'm bringing that into the home without asking permission, without getting consent to walk up to my partner who's sharing this experience with me and going, hey, I've got some really interesting things going on at work. You know, do you have some time later tonight or maybe tomorrow where we can expand these things a little bit? I know you have a lot on your plate, but I've processed a few of these things and I'm just kind of stuck. You know, I really appreciate your perspective. Like, that's a 30, 40-second conversation. Like, that's honoring your partner. That's honoring what they may be going through as well. Because you don't know, you're just spewing. You know, so being able to transition from work as a man, like being able to, at the end of my work day, process my shit. And when I close the door, I truly close the door to those things, those happenings. And if there's still a breadcrumb, going to Adrian and saying, hey, I've worked through a couple things. This is kind of the breadcrumb. Do you have an opportunity maybe later tonight or tomorrow morning or when you have some free time to chat about that? You know, and that goes both ways. And then, like, the simple thing is, men, like, we sometimes think that this is so complex, but it is really simple. Ask your beloved, like, how was her day? Turn your phone over. Better yet, put it in the fucking junk drawer. Pop a knee, grab a coffee, grab something, and just listen. Shut the fuck up, men. Listen.
Wow.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And
beautiful.
And I'm saying that from, like, we need more men saying stuff like this.
Yeah.
And yeah, listen. You went over a lot of, like, some toxic traits of masculinity. Ellie, I wanna switch the mic to you, and I want you to kind of, like, what's your take on toxic masculinity? What have you seen? And how do you feel?
You know, Roger, it's interesting when you were talking. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my partnership is because, you know, my heart goes out to men because since the age of time, you guys are not allowed to show anything. You know, if you cry, you're a pussy. You know, if you feel anything, it's a turn off. You know, I used to run this program of, like, if men cried, ew, like, that's disgusting. Like, I don't want my men to cry. You know, I want them to be masculine. I want them to be strong. And I think throughout this whole process, I realized what a program that was. And there's so much strength and power in a man being sensitive. There's so much strength and power in him being able to emote and feel the way that he's allowed to feel. And the thing that I've realized too is, because men have no outlet, right? Especially when you have a partner, it's so easy for us to project all of our shit on them, right? And what me and Danny have learned from Rachel is radical responsibility is taking care of your own shit, right? Doing everything that you can to really run through it, to be there for yourself, to love yourself through it. And then coming to your partner with, I've done all that I could and I would love support, or I would love to share with you with what I'm learning. And what I'm realizing through my relationship is that's love. It's the coming together. It's not the save me, fix me, let me dump everything on you so that you feel as much as I feel. Love is, I've worked on it as much as I could, and now I'm just asking for you to show up in just pure love. And in that sense, that's what elevates the love. And so I'm watching men like you and Danny go from 0.0 to really into the evolution of men. And to see you guys be so vulnerable, to see you guys be so tender, is such a game changer. And this is exactly what the world needs, is the whole way that men have been. There's so much darkness because of it. And not that women, of course, we've participated in as well, but Rachel always says, at least women bleed every month, you know? So we're forced to feel something, but y'all never allowed to feel anything. So to see how you are evolving in this way is so mind-blowing, I think, for women. And it's a time for us to stop bashing you guys and putting you in this category of toxic masculinity. I mean, you guys are here to show men what it feels like to be sensitive, to be in your feminine, and to allow your heart to open. And it is fucking beautiful.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you, Danny, on that. I mean, you know, as you were talking about that, Ellie, what really popped up for me was my experience in and around athletics as a young boy. That's where a lot of this stuff was imprinted. You know, I was looking for a father figure. I was looking for respect. I was looking for worthiness, proving, acknowledgement, appreciation, and an outlet for my rage. And that's where it occurred. And as I've gone through this work and expanded my ability to have these conversations with my son, you know, both my kids, Adrian, myself, like even my animals, you know, like we talk about like the dumping on our animals. So I don't want to leave those furry friends out. But imagine like a coach, like a young football coach as a man, seeing one of their players cry or emote or be hurt, and just go out there and get on their level and be like, hey man, you know what? It's okay. Like, let it out. Like, you do what you need to do. Let that crying out. Like, this is a sign of strength, young man. Like, how can I support you in this journey while you're hurting? Versus, no one fucking cries in football. Like, suck it up. Get back out on like that's that's the type of thing that we can do as men in this space that have the stewardship over other young men. The relationship between a man and a son, or a man and another man's son, in that coaching aspect, there is so much ability to just provide an unbelievable space for that young boy to see and witness and feel unconditional love no matter what happens on that field. Like, young coach, young man coach, you have no idea what you hold in your hands with these young men. And that's just, I just wanted to, you know, share that from what, you know, what you talked about, Ellie.
Yeah. And there's so much power that comes from really being able to tap into our emotion. And the more that as men we suppress and repress these aspects of ourselves that we're made to feel ashamed of, the more we're losing aspects of ourselves, which will directly result in you losing your power. And that's the journey that I've really been on, is these parts of me that I wasn't willing to look at and I kind of pushed out the way. Whenever I finally reintegrated them, and I've been finding them piece by piece, I feel myself just becoming more powerful because I'm becoming more whole. And as a man, I'm sure you want to feel powerful. And part of this, like, woundedness comes from maybe your lack of feeling powerful and your need to feel like a man. That was something that I went through a long time. It was like, I don't feel like a man, so I need to feel like a man. So what have I got to do to make myself feel masculine? Well, part of, I think, the tapping into your masculine is tapping into your feminine and being balanced.
Absolutely.
And when we're able to be in a more balanced place, then the aspects, the divine aspects of the masculine and feminine come out instead of the wounded and the toxic. Now, before we started this podcast, we were chit-chatting and you mentioned the word anchor. And I'd love for you to kind of go into exactly that.
You know, from the context, you know, I've always kind of explored this word, you know, in and around ceremony, or in and around, you know, expansion, contract, and things like that. Like, what, you know, in the context of an anchor, like, it can be this very grounded, you know, word or association or metaphor, like as you list through the ocean, and I've always looked at the ocean as this expansive, visual representation of feminine energy. Like the depth of it, it can feed you for your life. So the subsistence associated with it, the love that is there, and it can also kill you. So being able to navigate that, as a man in a boat, so to speak, listing through the ocean, how you want to navigate that, the lighthouses that are associated with that, the shoreline that's associated with it. So finding your way back home, finding your way back to the shoreline. And oftentimes you may need to anchor out in the middle of the ocean to unpack the little things before you continue on your journey. But yeah, it has a lot to do with just that piece of it, is a groundedness, a stability, an opportunity for you to take a moment to unpack the moments, those previous moments of the journey. You had to get somewhere in the boat to get to a point of anchoring. So that point A to point B, from anchor to anchor, having a divine ability, a loving ability to take in the moment, to lay in the boat, take it all in, breathe in the ocean air, breathe in the power of the feminine energy. And the ocean can be dark. And in my humble opinion, the feminine energy for a lot of men, when we talk about the darkness, that's the darkness. And it's not to give it a negative connotation. It's just we're so disconnected from it that we see it as a darkness. And really, through this journey, it's going into the darkness of my disconnection with the feminine energy and fucking shining my light. Getting to the center, to the center, to the center. And then expanding. And then anchoring. Getting back to the center, to the center, to the center. Expanding and anchoring and just continuing that evolution of moving through that ocean. And eventually, at some point in time, you're going to bring your boat back home. You bring your boat back home to yourself, because that's really what the journey is finding your way back to the power of yourself. And that's what I really lost in a lot through this relationship and this marriage with Adrian, was we both lost ourselves. Like we were both very powerful individually prior to coming together, being trauma bonded. But we just lost ourselves. We were so codependent and so like guilt association. Like if I wanted to do this, it was this. If she wanted to do this, it was me guilting her, manipulating her, some low key bullshit, passive aggressive shit. And now it's like she's on vacation in Mexico with her girlfriend for 10 days and I'm fucking ecstatic that she's doing it. And she's beautifully aware of like the house isn't going to burn down. Dogs are going to get walked. Like everything's going to be stable and beautiful here at the house. So she can come home to a wonderful, energetic home with no bullshit or guilt associated with it. So we're both very aware of like our space and needing our space, but we're also extremely aware of communicating around where we're at. Like, hey, this isn't about you. I'm just in kind of a weird space. I need, an hour or two. Sure. No sweat, no guilt, no manipulation, no nothing. You go do what you need to do and come back whole. How amazing is that?
Yeah. Super powerful. You've said a lot of powerful things in that. And, I'm really understanding what it means for the man to be the divine masculine and allowing the woman to be the divine feminine, because as men really work through their things, like I'm seeing my partner in the container that he can hold for me as I blaze or as I work through my things. And the only way that he could do that is by a reflection of how much he's working on himself. And so I think what you're saying is such a testament to where we are all headed as a humanity and in partnership as well. And what I'm seeing too, Roger, is that the more you heal yourself, is that you're really seeing your wife for who she really is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so what's been that experience for you to really see her?
Yeah. Like, going back to Danny, circling back to Danny, when you talk about like the journey together expanding. God, I wish people could experience like a relationship with a significant other in this aware, conscious, loving state where it's like our vocab words are so limiting in and around like how to like bring a word or a verb or a phrase or anything to what it's like, you know, when it comes to like intimacy isn't just sex, guys. Like, get that out of your head. It is not just sex. Like, intimacy is no judgment, no shame, safety, security. Providing is not just the ones and zeros that you put in your fucking bank account, gents. Like, it is providing safety and security and honoring of your spouse. And when there is, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Danny.
No, I would also say part of intimacy is being able to accept your partner when they're in fear, when they're running programs, when they're showing up to you and saying like, this is where I'm at right now, and I'm working through this, and there's tears pouring down her face, and you can see the fear in their eye, is instead of showing up like a child and saying, well, I can't deal with that right now. You're like, I can't handle your emotions. Being able to hold them and look at them like eye to eye and say, it's okay. Like, I've got you. Like, just hold on and everything will be okay. That's intimate as well as like holding each other when we're going through pain. And I see so much out there of like, this isn't just men, but it is men, is like not being able to handle a partner's emotions. And I know I've been like that in the past. When I was in my depression, the partner that I was with at the time was very emotional, and I couldn't deal with her emotions because I was struggling to deal with my own. And so I know what that's like. And let me tell you, there's no intimacy when you can't handle your partner's good or bad emotions.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I heard something a long time ago, you know, and I'm not looking to classify like, you know, a woman in this sense, but for men, what's often hysterical, like emotionally, that we may say that this is hysterical, is often historical. So when there's this emotion coming up and it is very strong, gale force winds, like, understand that it may not even have anything to do with you. So like to Danny's point,
it doesn't. Yeah,
to Danny's point, like close that distance physically, tenderly touch their hand and be like, whatever it is, I got you, babe. Like, we will get through this together. How can I support you? I may not, even if you don't feel like you have the tools, like the toolkit. And that's been the best part about this journey, is like the toolkit. I don't feel like I never have, like, I am without the ability to support Adrienne in the way that she needs it. You know, but even just that point of like closing the distance, touching her hands gently, and just being like, whatever you need to let go, just release. Just, I'm here to support you and listen. And if it has something to do with me, then that's for me to work on.
The teaching that comes up is relationships are not there to make you happy. They're there to make you conscious.
Yeah.
And they really are. They're there to make you more conscious about you seeing your reflection of your shit, and also understanding what it's like to go through pain, and then learning how to give compassion and empathy to someone that you love. And if you can do that to your partner then figure out how to do that to the rest of humanity, and watch as the world will change. Because if we can really start healing in these relationships, then, you know, there's a reason why it's called Masters of Self. It's all a relationship to self. We're all just reflections, seeing each other in different ways, but the most intimate way that we do see it is through our partnership. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, no, compassion is a beautiful, beautiful first energy. You know, it has an unbelievable vibration associated with it, and it's a very tough energy to get to sometimes. You know, so when we can see our partner in this kind of, hysteric or whatever, just going, I now have so much more compassion and empathy for what they're going through and what they're experiencing, and just going, I'm here. Like I'm a rock. Like we can get through this together. There's nothing, and this goes to a lot. Like for 20 years, I showed up as a shithead, and Adrian had to get that out. How am I, as a divine man or divine masculine, going to not allow, like, and looking to repair our relationship? Like, I'm one of the lucky ones that got a second chance. I'm not going to fuck that up. And how can I, in that space of getting the second chance, and she is letting it go, like proverbial, like Mike Tyson haymakers. And then I'm like, oh, I can't deal with this. Well, I fucking caused it. So how do I look at compassion for myself, compassion, and then the accountability side? And this notion of, oh, you just didn't know any better. Sorry, that doesn't really fly. Now it's a matter of taking accountability for the things that we were imprinted with and programmed. And that's like the other best part about like going through this together. Is like we have this understanding, this comprehension of, oh my God, we see where this stuff came from. Mother wound, father wound, ancestral wound, generational wound. Like the language we speak around our pain is so elevated. And that's
using that language, I found helps us actually detach from the energy that is at stake. So instead of maybe getting lost in the story and replaying this story in your head, being able to use the language of, oh, this is a wound, this is a program. What it does is it allows us to get rid of the story, look at what really is going on here, look at the energy, and detach from all the chatter that the mind wants to create and all the suffering which is experienced in the mind, and really honestly look at what are we dealing with here. Because especially in relationships, you start having conflict with your partner, it probably turns into an argument. And the deeper reason of why you two are arguing has nothing to do with the situation right now. It's the fact that you're triggered and you're running a program or wound. They're triggered and they're going head to head. You're getting defensive, or they're getting defensive, and that's triggering something in you. And then it just turns into this shitstorm and spiral, which goes way out of control. And when you're able to detach from that, and understand like, oh, I'm running a program right now of defensiveness. Let me come back to myself and get out of this program. Just being able to label it as a program and use this vocabulary you speak of, it really elevates the way that you see things, because you're detaching from the story and looking at the truth of what's going on.
Yeah, kind of to pivot off that, and Ellie, I'm curious as a woman, as you're in a relationship, how, and it's kind of like an opinion question, so to speak. If you're in a relationship with a man and you're in this heated argument, it's just getting kicked up, the dust storm is moving, you see it accelerate, and all of a sudden your partner goes, hey, I'm a little emotionally charged right now. Like, I get where we're at and I feel it's important. I'm not looking to dilute anything other than I'm in a space emotionally where I can't bring my full wholeness into this conversation. Could we take 30 minutes to an hour, look at how we're showing up here in this space, and then come back in 30 to 40 minutes in a much more whole, loving space and handle this conversation in that manner? Like that, like how would you feel as a woman with a man coming to you with that?
My partner and I have a code word, where, and right. And you use that code word to really take that time away to really go, really feel into what's really going on. And I've seen my partner and I, when he does that, it's not only sexy, but it elevates the relationship, because you can see that he's taking radical self-responsibility. And so that's what it's about, right? It's really about not throwing up on each other, not projecting each other. It's really about taking that time out and then coming back and being like, all right, I worked through it. Here's what I came up with. And here's what I want to share with you. And allowing them the space to do that is also love. Because I think a lot of times in my woundedness, space meant, oh, you don't want me.
Yeah.
And then that would spiral me into a whole other shitstorm, right? But understanding and feeling into the energy of where is he coming from? Where am I coming from? What do we both need right now? That's love.
And it takes both sides, as you mentioned there. If one side stands in their power, it allows the other side to really see their shit. But if one side of the relationship is running the programs, if the other person starts running theirs, there's the spiral.
Yeah.
And what we have to do in conscious partnerships is when our partner shows up in woundedness, is to stand in our power and understand, like, not run programs. Because if you run programs, then that's the worst time that you can do it. And by staying true to yourself and in your power and not running anything and not getting defensive or, you know, attacking them, we're able we're able to then come from love, and we're able to then see where they're at and like, oh yeah. But getting there is a process.
Yes.
And we're talking about this like it's super easy to do.
It's not.
Well, we've gone through 6 months.
Warriors work.
Of the most intensive training,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to be able to show up like this. So for anyone listening that is listening to this, like, oh, I can do that, you know.
Yeah.
If you do
there's
try
ego,
and show,
there's a toxicity.
Right.
That's probably your ego showing
That's
up.
probably...
This takes time to learn. It's not something that, it's a process in which we coach. You know, we're all coaches here. This is exactly what we coach. And it takes time to learn. It takes time to integrate this wisdom and to be able to be triggered and still stand in your power, or to see someone that's triggered and then not you run programs. Like, it is a long process that takes a long, not a long, but a good chunk of time for you to master. How long that takes is down to you. How much work are you willing to be devoted to put in? How much work are you willing to do to look at yourself honestly and look at your shadow aspects, parts of you that you don't like? And before we wrap this up, Roger, we always end this with, like, I want you to imagine there's a younger version of you right now out here in the audience, right? And he is listening. What does he need to hear? What lessons have you learned along the way that you really want to teach him? Because I know for me, there's a younger version of me out there, and I needed this version of me. And I know it's the same for every single one of us. We always needed that guidance. And this is the time for you to put that word out there to whoever's listening.
I would probably sum it up as, it has nothing to do with you. All the pain and the things that you may be, and then I'm speaking from my experience, you know, growing up. There is no limit as to what you can experience in this human experience. Like, you are not a blueprint. You are not a robot. You know, your programming, your energetics can elevate. You know, you're not the circumstance that you're currently in. And at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with you. And that's really, you know, I learned how to physically be alone so much. You know, I didn't know what it was like to be together. I never learned what love was. So how can I love someone when I don't fucking know what it is? So do yourself a massive service and learn how to love yourself deeply, intimately, with devotion and divine responsibility before you even embark on a relationship, before you even embark on a date. Learn yourself. Master yourself. Masters of self. Before you go out into the world without learning about your patterns and programs and triggers and whatnot, and what you bring to the world, how you've shown up to this point, so that you can bring a wholeness, because then you can be a guide. You can not just be in love, that state of being with another person, but allow them to blossom, allow them to release, allow them to let go, allow them to heal and guide and to provide that non-judgmental, divine, masculine, safe, secure space for that person. You know, we owe it to ourselves to go through the journey. We have to. It's our fucking birthright to come back home. Like, reclaim your birthright. You know, that's what I would share with my younger self.
Yeah, beautifully said, Roger. I feel like you need to come back for round 2 real soon. We just skimmed the surface. Thank you so much for your journey. We can feel how much work you've put into yourself. Your transformation has been incredible to witness, and just to hear the way you're speaking of everything, like, it's amazing. And this is the future of men. The future of men is you and Danny. Truly.
Well, thank you very much, Ellie. I just also, you know, I'm at some point in time in my relationship, I lost the gratitude for Adrian's interest, just being her interested in me, where I was at. And that is one of the things that I embarked and take true to my heart in this second chance. Is I am so grateful that she stayed interested and went on the journey and went through all the steps of separation, anger, resentment. Like, I am so grateful for all of that journey, because it fucking forced me to learn about myself, reclaim myself, and know that she is the one. And unbelievably grateful for her doing that and put in that pain, like, grateful for the pain, because then I'm here talking to you, which has been an amazing experience. And without that pain, without that journey, I'm not here.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
So thank you, Aid.
Yes.
I love you.
So good. So good. If anybody at home wants to work with Roger, please visit us at mastersofselfuniversity.com. He's obviously an incredible coach and will guide you back home. If you guys want to share, subscribe, leave a rating, we would love for you guys to do that. And till next time, we will see you guys then.
Right on. Let's
Bye,
go!
Let's go!
Let's go!